Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of Finweek Money Matters, the show that helps you manage your finances. I'm Demisha Greater, and my co-hosts are Tandisizwe Mahlutshana and who's the Finweek Deputy Editor, and Kristia van Heerden from Finweek.com, who's the editor of that. Now, on today's show, we discuss opportunities for starting up your own private security business, given the nature of crime in South Africa. We then go to the viewer feedback, and finally, we take a look at this week's Befriend the Trend. Now remember, you can read more about these stories and many others in this week's edition of Finweek on shelves from today. The magazine is also available digitally in English and Afrikaans via mysubs.co.za. Now, the inescapable reality of crime in South Africa has driven people to invest a great deal in their own safety. Finweek takes a look at the vast growth in the private security sector as well as the possible business opportunities it presents. Joining me in studio is retired General Johan Hooghart, who is now involved in the security business in South Africa, and Elite South Africa Security Solutions MD Herman Mulder. Thank you so much for making the time to join us today. Maybe before we kick off with regards to how security services work and so forth, Tandisizwe, you can tell us, why are people going into the private security industry? Do we not trust the South African police services anymore?
To me, sure, the fact is it's a lot of reasons, but we can already tell by the statistics from Statistics South Africa already, which says that about 50% of South African households have taken physical measures to protect their homes. And we've also looked at further surveys like the Victims of Crime survey, which also says that a lot of people don't trust the police because of things like corruption, because of things like arriving late at a scene, etc., etc. So it's a variety of those reasons. But if you look at the growth of the private security industry on its own, one cannot say it's only driven by the crime factor. There's a lot of other factors, such as South Africa is a growing nation. We are building malls left, right, and center. We're building new residential areas, and those need to be guarded. And the police cannot fulfill that role. Therefore, private security steps in, and that's how it has grown. But on the whole, if you look at the residential setting, really people have a problem with trusting the South African police. And therefore they've decided that with the police, I'm also going to supplement my safety and my security by getting a private security or an armed response or an alarm system, etc., etc.
Kristia, Tandisizwe just made a couple of points there, saying there are a whole host of factors. I mean, are you able to elaborate on what are some of the factors that are driving South Africans to take safety into their own hands?
I think it's a sad situation that we live in a country where people feel that their personal safety is constantly under threat. And I know my family and a lot of people who take those measures. But what surprised me in the article that Tandisizwe wrote is the fact that also in informal settlements, people are starting to pay private security firms. And then a 250 Rand subscription fee to a private security firm becomes a lot of money in a low-income household, and I think it's an indictment on crime in this country and on the police service that people who struggle to put bread on the table have to spend so much money to ensure their own personal safety.
Now, Herman, you are now, you've taken this as a business opportunity. Can you tell us how did you get into this? So what have you seen over the years? Is this a growing trend?
Yeah, definitely a growing trend. I started with this from the military. I was previously in the military, and from there I left the military, 95, and start with my own business. So definitely from there, where I've started up to now, a definite situation of growing, not as such as a business, but in the industry. I'm talking to us about the industry as such. Definitely, I mean, where we work in 2011 with 2 security guards per every police member. Now it's already 3. So there's a definite growth in the industry. There are more security. It's still, from a business point of view, it's still difficult to get there for reasons that we will get to a little bit later, I presume. But yeah, it's a growing industry. There's no doubt about that.
I found it quite shocking. It was a 55 billion rand industry locally.
Yeah.
And I mean, what I found interesting about it is also the job creation opportunities here, and what goes with that is obviously a very dangerous job. And I guess what my question would be for you, Herman, is do you provide income protection to the security guards who work for you? Like, are they covered by some sort of income protection due to the nature of the job?
Yeah, look, there are definite prescriptions by the security board, by CIRA, indicating that you have to have this insurance and your what you call a provident fund and so forth. But on the other hand, you also have to take in consideration from a business point of view, financial point of view. You pay so much for the guard, which is prescribed. You have to pay this minimal rates. Once you pay these minimal rates, what the public can afford, there's not very much left to make a good profit. So it's a difficult situation. Yeah? So there's a conflict of situation.
And
there.
what about things like startup costs and compliance? I understand that there's a whole process you have to go through before you can actually start your business.
Yeah, definitely. There's a process that you have to go through. In my case, it took me 9 months to get there. People just slow to process your request to become a compliant service provider, especially from the CIRA side. So, but yeah, that's a difficult one, and there's a cost on that as well. Expensive. It's expensive to get there. But on the other hand, I also want to tell you that there's. I have to mention it now. There's a lot of people when you go as a incompliant or uncompliant service provider, you can come into the market very cheap, start it very cheap. But if you want to be compliant, yeah, it costs a penny, definitely.
Johan, speaking about opportunities and how this industry can grow further and bigger, you're now looking into it in Africa. Can you tell us about the opportunities that are available?
Well, quite for a long time, South Africans and South African companies is involved in the rest of Africa since '94. In the DRC, in many other countries, especially in those countries with big mining operations. There's a lot of South Africans physically and a lot of South African companies working there. We have a good reputation. They want to work with South Africans. We employ people mostly on the lower levels, 99% locals with some management from South Africa. And what normally people will do is start up a company there, registered there with local shareholders. And there is still a lot of opportunity there. We are seeing now that we are moving outside to our neighbors with the people who's putting alternative electricity, like solar farms and so on, where we're getting involved, and in mining. So yes, there's a lot of opportunity there.
Interesting factor, when we were speaking before the start of the show, you said that people in those countries trust South Africans explicitly. That's why they want to work with South African companies, or South African security companies.
Yeah, that's generally my experience. They would rather work with us because we are Africans than people who maybe they don't understand or don't understand them, or as they see who will maybe abuse them. So yes, it helps.
Johan or Herman, to what extent are we seeing, the public and private partnerships? Because I've been reading here, it says government at the moment has been outsourcing to, private security companies. Are we seeing a lot of that collaboration? Maybe you'd like to start.
Look, in the first place, with my experience from being 37 years in the military and on a senior level, the military definitely does not want to be involved in security. Their task is different. It's to defend the country. And with some big events in South Africa, it's always difficult to explain to the organizers, you can't have military to guard the venue or so. It's private security. So there's definitely not from their side to be involved. But yes, people are outsourcing, like the police outsourcing their guarding at police stations. Well, there can be a reason for that, but on that level, yes, that is happening, but not otherwise that much.
What can the SAPS learn from private security firms? What are you doing better than the police?
Working for your money. providing a service that people pay you for, and not just getting a salary at the end of the month. By that I don't mean they are not working. But yes, if you go and sell a service and people pay you for it, you must provide that service. So they can, we need people who are able to promote your company and really deliver. If the boss of a company comes in a gate tonight and he found the guard sleeping, your guard, tomorrow the chances is good that you lose a 200,000 rand contract. So if you ask what they can learn, yes, that's what they can learn to really deliver.
Herman, I've read a lot of really disturbing things about corruption within private security firms, especially on ground level, security guards who committed CV fraud, who might have a criminal record, who get involved with syndicates. It's maybe a little bit alluring, you know, when someone offers you a lot of money and you're earning a security guard salary. So what do you do as the owner of a security firm to protect your clients basically from your guards?
Yeah, look, that is a reality in our business. We have a big workforce there outside, and a lot of people that we have to take our resources from. And yeah, very definitely that's a big problem. So what are we doing? Is to utilize, let me say, instruments like voice trace analysis, like polygraph testing. You need, as a security company, and most security companies, you know, they develop their own set of questions where you put your recruit, you put him through that questionnaire, see what is his real capability, because the documents that you get is not necessarily true. And then very definitely you have to be on your feet. You have, like the other day, I found a guy asking for a job, but he provided me his girlfriend's ID document. And only from the 0 after the birth date, I could establish that this is a woman's ID.
Wow.
And yeah, so you have to be very creative and on your feet. You have to take this as a reality, and you have to approach it as a reality. Otherwise, you're going to employ people who's not supposed to be in that industry. Which brings me to another aspect, which I feel very strong about, and that is, yeah, you have to do your vetting process internal. But on the other hand, they need, for the growth of this industry and the magnitude of this industry, we really need to get some role players in order to get people available, prepare people for this industry. This industry is not going to get smaller, it's going to grow. I'm thinking, now let me think for one moment off my feet. Why can't we put a course like my son do rugby in a grade 9 and 10, for instance, as a subject? Why can't you have something like that? But sorry, it's ways just to purify and to get people in the right mindset, and where you can do your vetting from over a long period.
Unfortunately, we'll have to leave it at that for today. This conversation could definitely could use a couple more minutes or so. Thank you so much for making the time to join us today. That was the retired General Johan Hughart and Elite South Africa Security Solutions MD Herman Mulder. Now it's time for us to pay the bills. We'll be right shortly after this break. Welcome back to Finweek Money Matters. We now go over to our questions from our viewers, and we'll kick it off. The first one is from Sandile, and Sandile says, what is the difference between a unit trust and an exchange-traded fund? Tandisizwe, can you answer this question for us?
Mr. Sandile, I'm from Cape Town. I think the difference, to try and simplify the difference, is a unit trust is an instrument, is a fund that is designed to buy shares into specific sectors. So the unit trust can be an equity unit trust fund that buys shares specifically, but it can also be a balanced unit trust or balanced fund that buys shares in specific sectors to balance out. So you can have a balance of 30% in equities, 30% in property, 5% in cash, etc., etc. So the structure there is, you as an investor, you give money to the portfolio manager of that unit trust. He then takes your money and buys the units across the various shares they own within this unit trust. And it is actively managed in that you have a manager who looks at stocks and financial markets day in, day out and says, right, this particular stock is going to go down over the next few weeks. We are going to sell it and buy one which we think is going to go up. That's a unit trust. An ETF is a different one. It is a portfolio that follows a particular index within the JSE. So you can have a top 40 ETF. The top 40 ETF is you as an investor. You put money into that particular ETF. Your money goes to the top 40 companies that are listed on the stock exchange. And it is not actively managed in that. It tracks the index. Wherever the index goes, your ETF is likely to follow, and it's going to land pretty much where the index goes. So it's an index tracker, we call it in the industry.
Okay, let's head over to the next question. Why has Shoprite shares gone down like it has? Is it still a good share to keep, or has it run its course? That is from Tony in Woodmead. Tandisizwe, maybe you can take this one again.
Not an easy question there, Tony. But Shoprite, by about the end of 2012, it was very expensive. It was trading on a PE of 33. That was very expensive, and you had Pick n Pay trying to tighten up their ship. You had the likes of Massmart coming on board seriously. Therefore, the competition started to stiffen. You had Spar also, repositioning and positioning their business. So the competition started to be very strict for Shoprite. As a result, their shares, or their returns, also started dropping. Though not to a negative level, but they started dropping to the low double-digit growth. And then the share price started to go down because other companies presented a much more compelling story. Now, if you're asking about is it a good share to keep, I think absolutely, because Shoprite is still one of those companies in South Africa that are very aggressive in Africa, and we know there are massive opportunities in Africa that are still untapped, and Shoprite has a pipeline of plans that are definitely going to reward investors handsomely over the period. So
it's not a concern that you've seen Shoprite pulling out some more, out of certain geographical areas. Is that not a concern at all?
I don't think it is, because if they have, I can't remember the name of this property company. It's a listed property company, but they have an arrangement with them. What they're doing is, in many countries in Africa, they have this particular company building shopping centers for Shoprite. So, and that pipeline itself is worth billions. Specific shopping centers where Shoprite is going to be the anchor tenant. So there are those pipelines that are coming up. I think pulling out of certain regions means that it's costly to remain there than to get out.
Okay, let's move over to the next one. How often should one's investment strategy be rehashed? Kristia, can you take this one for us?
Yes, I think the answer is simple. As often as needed and as little as possible. When you start investing, you start with a specific goal in mind. So you should start with a specific goal in mind. I'm not sure if everybody does it. So say your investment strategy is to retire in 10 years. When you start investing, you look at your portfolio and you put together a portfolio that would help you to make that happen. And then when you initially develop your strategy, you work on a few assumptions. So you're going to buy this share, or you're going to buy into an ETF. It's going to have a certain amount of returns over a period of time. When that is no longer the case, when your investment no longer performs the way that you projected it would perform, then you might go and sit down and rethink your strategy. Or when your goals change, when you decide you no longer want to retire in 10 years, you want to retire in 5 years. Now your portfolio needs to be more aggressive, and maybe you need to look at that. If that's not the case, so if your goals haven't changed, or if your investment portfolio is not delivering on the goals that you set out, then only do you sit and change it. And if that doesn't happen, then you just leave it.
Kristia, thank you. Let's now take a look at Befriend the Trend. Now, looking at the trend this week, tapping into sub-Saharan's cashless society. We've seen this play out quite a lot, especially when it comes to the likes of Nigeria and Kenya. They've been able to get this right. What's your view with regards to this? Is this the next best thing?
I think there's a lot of opportunity here. There's a lot of opportunity for mobile operators, financial institutions, even government to get involved here. The uptake in South Africa has been a little bit slow, and that's to do a lot with legislation. It's very difficult. I mean, if you've ever tried to open a bank account, you'll know this, what it takes to actually, participate in the financial services sector here. So the uptake has been really slow locally, and I think if a company can find a way to circumvent that, there could be potentially a massive amount of money in this sector.
But you find it quite difficult because now I want to make the example with the likes of Safaricom in Kenya. They've been dominating that market. If you're an outsider, you're an investor, who wants to get into that specific market, I mean, what options do you have? Do you think there's still scope for other investors to come in a market like Kenya where Safaricom is just dominating?
Look, I think in a Kenyan market, perhaps Safaricom, I mean, they've got first mover advantage and they're dominating the market, as you rightly said, but you shouldn't discount the rest of sub-Saharan Africa. There's a lot of opportunity maybe in neighboring, even in our neighboring countries, and locally, massive opportunity.
Absolutely.
Anything that you'd like to add, Tandisizwe?
No, I mean, I think Chris is right. I think just because there's someone dominating doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't space for new entrants to come and disrupt the market. I mean, I think that someone started a new industry or trend, which is mobile banking. But if you think about it, over the next few years, there are going to be new services that are supplementing this mobile banking that can actually go on to improve people's lives and bring convenience to people. But it only needs someone to think beyond what is already being offered. So the market is there, but what is it that you can bring further? I mean, if you think about computers, there were computers and people thought that's it. But someone came with tablets and we thought that's it. Someone has come with phablets.
Yes.
So it needs an entrepreneur who can look into the market, look into the problems, and find out if this is now what is currently being offered, what is it that can go on to simplify people's lives and make things easy.
So basically we need somebody to come in and disrupt the market. Thank you so much for making the time to join us today. And that's all from this week's edition of Finweek Money Matters. Thank you so much to our co-host today, Kristia van Heerden from finweek.com, as well as Tandisizwe. He's also from Finweek. They will be seeing you again next week at the same time. You can go to finweek.com to view the event. Remember, they can also read more about on all of this and other articles as well in this week's edition of Finweek. So from myself and the rest of the team, thank you so much and have a great day.